Welcome back to Things of Gold, a Snarky Puppy podcast by Storm Sound and Osiris Media. My name is Ryan Storm.
And I'm Megan Gliona.
And we are back today for the penultimate episode of our season 1 here on Things of Gold. It's kind of hard to believe that we're already kind of at the end, even though, it's been 6 months, but it's hard to believe that we're already almost at the end here.
I know. I remember when you came to me about this project and I was sitting in a hockey rink watching my daughter play hockey, and it was cold, and I was like just so fascinated by this idea, and that seems like it was just yesterday, and it also seems like a long time ago. So Here we are at episode 11.
Another band? Seriously?
I know. I was like, I don't know, Ryan. I don't know anything about them. And then you're like, well, that's what we could do it about. We could do this show where you learn about it, and I'm really glad we did it. It's been so fun.
Me too. It's been an amazing season, going through talking about all these shows. We've been getting a lot of amazing feedback on our last episode, episode 10, talking about this Music Box Village show. And of course, you and I we're recovering right now from a big 7-night fish run in Madison Square Garden, over the last couple of weeks. We're not going to talk about that here. You have talked about it extensively on HF Pod, which everyone should go check out. And I have written about it extensively if anyone is interested in reading me talk for a very long time about fish. Check out ryanstorm.substack.com. It's where I write about all the concerts I go to, including the 3 Snarky Puppy shows I will be attending in the month of September.
Yeah, that's exciting. I love reading what you write. And also, Ryan, we should tell them that we did talk to Eric a little bit and get some inside info about that Music Box show.
We did. So we talked to our good friend Eric Lenz from Ground Up Music, who's also a fish fan. So he was at a couple of the shows. But we chatted with him a little bit about the show and, a little bit how did the band feel about that Music Box Village show? Because we loved it so much. And a couple of the other Jam fans that I've had listen to that show have said wow, this is so cool. And apparently the band hated it.
Yeah, we knew it because at the end of the show, there's no encore. And Michael says thanks for being here. This was challenging. So that was our kind of first hint. But then, and once you see Snarky Puppy and you see how they work together on stage, it makes sense why that would be so challenging. But it was pretty interesting to hear from Eric that they did feel like they were not happy with the show because it was my favorite show I've listened to all season.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite Snarky Puppy shows ever. I said that, first of all, I'm really glad they released the recording of that show because that seems like a situation where they might have been like, this show sucked, don't upload the recording.
Yeah.
And so thank you to Michael and whoever maybe convinced Michael to just say fuck it and upload the recording anyway, because I'm very grateful we get to hear this show because it's amazing. I actually, both of our favorite parts of the show was the Binky. Of course, I heard from a couple other people that they really loved the Embossed, but it's just a really, really unique performance. Eric said stuff like, what we kind of predicted based on the number of flubs in the show, they couldn't really hear each other. There wasn't a proper monitoring system. I'm surprised that the show was recorded in as good a quality as it is based on all of those factors.
I know, it is kind of surprising. I think that those things give the show so much personality and depth and interesting moments and obviously provide a chance for them to improvise and experiment in a way they don't usually do. So for me, that's a win. But, I'm sure it was challenging and I'm sure it was frustrating at times, but I still think I would love to see them play there. They probably never will again, but I would love to.
Yeah. What an experience that would be. Well, that was the last episode, and we talked for a very long time about that show. So anyone who has not checked it out should go listen to that show and then check it out. But we're here for, we're heading across the pond once again for the final time. Both of our last 2 episodes take place in Europe in the fall of 2019. Both they're about a month apart from each other. This one is very early on in this final European leg of the Immigrance tour, and the other one we're going to talk about in 2 weeks will be towards the end of the leg. But this show that we're going to talk about today, we're going to be talking about October 26, 2019 in Hamburg, Germany. Not Hamburg, Hamburg. I made sure I pronounced that correctly.
I think though, but then when I was listening, Michael says Hamburg.
Oh,
So I don't know. I've always thought it was Hamburg, but I was 19 years old when I was there, so who knows?
there you go. You were there. You were there for
Long time
fish.
ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is the beginning of the final leg of the Immigrants tour, as I just mentioned. 7 months flying and driving all over the world for this band. Absolutely crazy, especially for again Michael, Justin, Bullock, and Maz, who are at every single show. This is the only I think 3 week long stretch of the tour of the entire year with no Bobby Sparks on keys. So it gives us a very interesting combination of just Justin and Sean on keys, where Sean does not have a B3. So there's a lot of
Mm.
space in the music, different tones. We'll talk about that as we get more into it. Also, we have two guitars, a very rare occurrence, which I'm very happy we get to talk about again because I love two guitar Snarky Puppy. This one, we've got Mark and McQueen today. Because what's interesting also is that one of the opening act for this first, I think, 4 or 5 shows the tour was the band Fork, also on Ground Up Music, FORQ, a band that has JT and McQueen in it. So both of them were pulling double duty for these 4 or 5 shows, that's a lot.
That's a lot. That's a lot, especially with all the travel involved.
Yeah, well, and then we had later in the tour, Keita was playing in one of the opening bands, and also playing with the band. It was crazy. But this is 3 weeks ish before they would record the Grammy-winning live album live at the Royal Albert Hall. Where they would have a lot more people in the lineup, then a lot less space in the music. So this is really interesting. A snapshot in the late period of these Immigrants songs. They've expanded. They're very, very comfortable playing them now. But there's less people in the band, or not less people in the band per se, but less layers, I feel like.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, you can definitely, everyone stands out. You can really isolate people a lot easier than you can in some of the other shows.
Yeah, definitely. Well, let's quickly go over the lineup. I already kind of mentioned most of the people, but I'm going to do it again anyway. We have Michael League on bass, of course, Mark Lettieri and Chris McQueen on guitars, Justin Stanton and Sean Martin on keyboards, Justin also on trumpet, of course, Bob Reynolds on tenor sax, Mike Mazmacher on trumpet and flugelhorn, Jason J.T. Thomas on drums, Marcelo Wolowski on percussion, and Chris Bullock on the tenor sax and the flute. So, Megan, where were they playing?
Well, I have no idea how to pronounce this, but the Gross Freiheit 36, something like that. It's the oldest and the largest club in Hamburg. So the Beatles, Kylie Minogue, Billy Strings is playing there this week. So really big acts have played there historically, and it looks awesome. I looked at some photos, and it has this really cool storefront, and it has this huge neon guitar that's outside that kind of sticks over above the street that it's on. It's got a capacity of 1,000, and it's about 15 minutes from where I saw Fish at the Markthal, which is kind of a famous venue as well. They're both kind of just north of the river in Hamburg, and just looks great. Looks like a really cool venue, and I wish Fish would have played there too, because that would have been cool.
Yeah, it's I just checked. It's pronounced Große Freiheit.
Ooh, I'm impressed.
And it pronounced to
Yeah.
it translates to lot of freedom.
Oh,
according
cool.
to Google Translate. So take that with a grain of salt.
Freiheit, freedom. I get that. That's awesome.
Freiheit.
Yeah, that was good. I've been
Thank
listening
you.
to some or watching some World War II documentary stuff, and there's a lot of German being spoken with subtitles, and German is an interesting language. So I thought you did a good job.
Thank you. It's the background. Obviously being Jewish, I've spoken some Hebrew and Yiddish in my life, and so I kind of know how to do like the guttural accent thing.
Yeah, nice. Good work.
Thank you. All right. Well, let's dive into this show here. Let's start with our opener here, Even Us. We talked about this in episode 9, I believe, the Japan show from right at the beginning of the year, how this works really great as an opener. Similar purpose here, great Maz solo. But here you can hear the layers of the two guitars, Mark and McQueen both taking different parts of the song, layering their parts really well. And especially during Maz's solo, Sean is just playing these incredibly jazzy piano chords underneath it, which just like blew me away. I was like, yeah, like that. This guy knows his music theory. There are moments we talked about this. I think it was in episode 4, even during a Mark solo on Young Stuff. I think it was, and I was like, yeah, this guy knows his music theory. It's another one of those moments where it's like, yeah, like you've listened to jazz, you know what's going on, you know how to do these weird chord progressions or whatever. But it's awesome. That's one of my favorite parts of this song.
It's so dramatic, just such a great opener. Bob comes in so sultry, so sexy, super vibe, like just really, really cool, effortless, awesome vibe. I love how each person comes in and it kind of builds upon the prior. So you're getting this like slow texture being added. It makes it feel really deep, so emotional at the beginning of the song. And then I love how it breaks down to just the piano. And then it's like, boom, the percussion and the drums kick in. And then Maz goes off on the solo. And it's great. It kind of like builds up with percussion at the end to this little crescendo. There's some like off tempo drumming. And then again, everything drops out except the piano at the end. It's really haunting. I love this song. I think it's just perfect here as an opener. I can also see it being really great, like as like a cool down number later in the show.
Yeah. This is a song definitely I didn't appreciate when I was first listening to these 2019 shows as much, but it's really grown on me the more I've listened to this era of the band. Slower Snarky Puppy, I feel like, is a little underrated.
Yeah, I agree. They're so great at it. They're so good at capturing emotion that like when they play slow and get quiet, it's great.
Yeah, definitely. All right. So moving on here, we've got Go, and it's 2019. So we've got the drum intro here. Around 2 minutes of JT kind of just messing around, mostly toms, all that good stuff. There's a brief little hiccup when McQueen comes in with the melody. There's like a little timing mishap, but they're professional musicians, and so it's only like a second, and then they get back on track.
Yeah, I did not hear that when I listened.
Well,
so
that's
they
good.
Tricked me.
Means they did it right.
Exactly.
So Mark takes the first solo on this one. We've heard this song a lot before, so it's really focusing on the solos now. But Mark takes the first solo. Very classic Mark Lettieri guitar solo here. Dark tone, sinister tone, lots of distortion. Very, very dirty.
Yeah, it feels so rough. It's really great. It has a lot of emotion too. I really like this. I think that the way that this song starts being so funky and having this like big energy, which is great following Even Us. But then when Mark comes in with the solo, it kind of gives it this different feel, which is nice. It's like a perfect little change up.
Yes. And then second solo, I'm going to say that I think it's Justin because it doesn't sound like Maz, but I'm not 100% sure. So forgive me if anyone listening knows whether it's Justin or Maz and has a better ear for trumpet than I do. Please correct me, but I believe it's Justin due to just the way the trumpet sounds and also the lack of Rhodes during this part just makes me think that it's Justin. But I love this trumpet solo. It's very cool because most of the band drops out. So I feel like this happens a lot in this leg of tour. I've listened to all these shows, and again, I keep talking about there's more space in the music. If you go back to these spring 2017 versions of Go that we talked about in episode, was it episode 5, episode 6? There's still a lot of stuff happening in these. People are still playing the riff. Most of the band is in there. But this just feels like, just like Michael and the drums, really. Like, that there's not a ton happening. And then, the guitar is kind of coming gradually as the solo progresses. But there's just so much space, which gives the soloist a lot more freedom to just kind of do whatever they want sonically, which I really like.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, that has a confidence to it, right? When you can play that way, when you can play more kind of simply and barely, it really adds something to it. It adds like a confidence, I think. And Michael, the bass line that he's laying down under the solo is so good. It's just super cool. Such a nice funk to it. And I think that this like the whole way that the song kind of like builds up, and hearing these solos at the end, like with McQueen on that solo, it's just so great. And the ending of the song is like, they're not really in a hurry. There's this like patient, slow descend out of the song, which I feel like is beautiful.
Definitely, yeah. And McQueen really does a great job here. Comparing the two solos really gives you a good indication, the vast differences between Mark and McQueen's playing styles and tones, even. This, my favorite McQueen solo, and I think yours too, is later in the show.
Yeah.
But this one is excellent. I always love the ending of Go. And then our next song here, we've got Bigley Strictness making its second appearance on the pod. I love this. There's definitely a darker tone to the early part of the show. Go has some upbeat moments, but there's a lot of darkness happening. Even us, the beginning of Bigley, both guitars play it, and the two of them layered on top of each other are really cool. We will hear it in the next episode with just McQueen. But this one is cool because you have that like straight ahead, like fiery tone from Mark, and then McQueen's, which I feel like is more like, I envision his is more like a snake. It's a little slippery, kind of off kilter at times, which is a really cool. They blend really well for this riff, which is really cool.
Yeah, I love that the beginning of this song, the percussion is so sharp and heavy hitting. It just has like this like pounding feeling that's very intentional, which is just in such an awesome juxtaposition to what Justin's doing in his solo. And it has like a great kind of energetic pull to it. And that moment when Bullock starts to get into his solo and he holds that really long note.
Yeah.
It's just so cool. And the drumming is not as sharp anymore. It just goes really deep. It's like this perfect moment. It's so cool.
Yeah, I love the three sections of this song.
Yeah.
They're really, really cool. They flow so well together, and they tell a story. You have this this initial one that's kind of like finding your footing. There's usually a lot more searching in this solo. And you get that classic Justin Moog work, very, very angular, I describe it as. There's a lot of delay on it. Really different from when we hear Bobby play the mini Moog. And, this tour, Bobby wasn't on this leg, and so Justin had the mini Moog that Bobby would usually play until Bobby joined, at which point Justin got a little fatty of his own. Like there was a lot of gear switching happening. But this is great. Yeah, as you mentioned, Bullock takes the second solo, gritty, affected sax. Again, more of that darkness that we hear. And then the third solo, it's kind of like the sun comes out, the sky is beautiful, walking down the street, and Bob Reynolds is just serenading you with the sweet sound of his saxophone. And oh boy.
Oh, God, this is just the most perfect solo. I mean, it's so soft. It's so incredibly soulful. He's floating between the notes. once again, it sounds like the music is playing Bob Reynolds. It always sounds like he's not doing it, that the music is doing it to him. And just, I have never in my life heard like a horn player that plays like the way he does. It just sounds like to come from his soul. I don't know. I cannot, I'm like losing words to describe Bob Reynolds because he's just so otherworldly.
Yeah.
And I love this solo so much. This is there's always like one moment when I'm listening to these shows that I text you. And this was the moment I was like, this just, wow.
Like, what is going on? Yeah, it's so good. Yeah, it's truly incredible. I love what he does with these outros. I love hearing how the different soloists approach them on the outros. The Royal Albert Hall version has a really great build from Zach on violin. There are a few really good ones from Sean on both Talkbox, Moog. We'll hear a really great one from Sean in the next episode. Justin, has a really amazing way of approaching these. It's just there's so much that can be done with this. It's a few minutes long, and just the build from nothing up to that euphoric peak when the horns come back in, and it's just like, yes, like this song is amazing.
It's so great. And you and I were talking about this a little bit earlier, and you wrote it down, but you haven't mentioned it, so I want to mention it. But you were talking about the delay. There's like a subtle delay that Bob Reynolds has. That is really beautiful. Like when you're listening to that and you can hear it's just like a slight kind of echoing and delay. It really adds like such a depth to that solo.
Definitely. Let's keep on going here. Song number 4, Bad Kids to the Back. This is just like, I just love listening to this song. It's so groovy. It just swings so hard. I love the beginning part, especially with, when they have the 2 saxes, so they can split up the horn parts accordingly. When it's just Maz and Bullock, they both play all the horn parts instead of the few lines that are just saxophones when there's multiple of them. And so here we hear it, properly, and it sounds awesome. Sean's first solo of the night right here. Really intense filter work on the Moog. Very sharp. Reminds me a lot of his What About Me solo from later in this tour. And also we hear a lot of it, I think 12/9/17 from Bogota, which, spoiler, might be an episode in another season. But the just a lot of really sharp filter work on the Moog, and Sean just rips it, throws in a P-Funk quote. In case you were doubting whether it was Sean, there's P-Funk teas in there, so it's him. But this is just an awesome Moog solo from him, on a song that we usually get a horn solo on this song. And so it's awesome to hear Sean take it as well.
Heard anything like what he's doing in this. It's really off kilter, has this condensed sound to it, and at one point he does like this really long sustain, just really fun. It's awesome. Such a great solo. He's incredible.
And we'll talk more about unique soloists later in this show, but I found this leg of the tour, it felt like Michael was having a bit more fun, throwing solos to different people, because stuff like this song again usually goes to the horns. There have been a ton of great keyboard ones as well, but there's another one later in the show we'll get to. But there's a Bad Kids from about a week later that Mark takes, which is really cool.
Fun.
Michael does a What About Me solo later in the tour. There's one chonks where Justin takes both solos on different synths.
That's cool.
It's just there's a lot of really unique soloists that happen in this early leg of the tour. It feels like, looking at the videos, it kind of feels like they're playing smaller venues, even though this is still 1,000 people in this venue. They're not really playing smaller venues. It feels like their stage setup is more condensed. That this is for a lot of the year they've had 3 keyboards, or at least the organ, which adds, or the organ and clav, which adds so much sonic. They take up so much sonic space, and they don't have these, and there's a lot more space. And I feel like Michael is just like having fun throwing stuff in different directions, which I think is really cool.
Yeah, which is giving the shows a different energy.
Yeah. And so after Bad Kids, Michael says hello and thank you. The crowd cheers for a while. Michael asks if they, are you cheering because you want us to leave? Like, is that, are we supposed to be done now? But he introduces the next song. He introduces Alma as a serious bust out, from their second album, which was recorded in 1978. It was not actually recorded in 1978, in case anyone is wondering. Sean pipes in that that's the year he was born.
Yeah, I love that.
Just, quality banter, as always. The last recorded performance before this, according to setlist.fm, so it might not be entirely accurate, especially for this far back in Snarky Puppy history, but it says the last recorded performance was January 26, 2014. So this is an old one. It's, from their second album, The World is Getting Smaller. Yeah. Came out in 2007. There's another song that they would revive from this one. I think they may have already busted it out, called Intelligent Design, which we'll hear in the next episode. That one had been played a little bit more recently, I think 2015, 2016, but still hadn't been played in a number of years. They did that on this tour as well. Those two kind of stuck with them for the whole last leg of this tour here. Alma and Intelligent Design got played fairly regularly, but then Outlier as well, which we heard a bunch earlier in the series, hadn't been played since 2017, I believe, and they played it twice on this tour. I would highly recommend everybody check out the 11/9/19 Outlier. It's Sean, and it's crazy. It is.
It's crazy.
It is crazy. Okay, so we're going to talk about Alma here. And this is really, really interesting. We began the show with 3 songs from Immigrants and 1 song from Culture Vulture. So all very recent Snarky Puppy. And Alma is, going back 12 years. At this point,
wow.
Sean hasn't joined the band. JT's not in the band. Bob's not in the band. Bob Reynolds isn't in the band. I don't think Mark was even in the band at the time.
Wow.
It's like super, super old school. You can tell almost immediately, like, it has that old school Snarky Puppy feel. Even if you've never listened to The World is Getting Smaller, like Megan, I don't know if you have. I've listened to this song from it.
Yeah.
But it has that old school Snarky Puppy feel, lots of very odd time signatures. You can tell that there's a lot more jazz influence in this, a lot of the Immigrant songs and the Culture Vulture songs. You start to see this world music influence as Michael kind of moves into that period of his songwriting. But there's just like this odd time funk feel at about the beginning of this song, and it's great.
It starts with like this kind of rain stick, really soft percussion in the intro, and the guitars come in with such a gentle touch.
Yeah.
And it does. It's so different from the Immigrant songs. I thought it sounded very old school too. When the band drops, the band drops back in, and it packs a little punch. There's just like a little boom to it. And I think it's really cool. It has like a very unsettled feeling. I think that's from the like you're saying, the change in time signature stuff. It's like has this like up down, feels like rough around the edges. Bullock's solos gets like really agitated feeling. It has this like kind of like edgier feeling to it that's really different.
Yeah, definitely. And I actually thought it was Bob for a while in the solo because there's no effects, right? Which is rare for Bullock. But then, you know, it got kind of aggressive, and I was like, oh, like this isn't Bob. Like, you know, I could tell by the tone a little bit later that it was Bullock. But it's a really, really great solo. Lots of dissonance, as I said, and aggressiveness to the solo, which is really cool. And then after the solo, we get this beautiful, nice, like feels like flood, almost from Mark, which is great, and an awesome percussion solo from Marcelo.
Yeah, the guitar playing is really softly, and it has this backed by this really bare and intense percussion. It's really isolating and like raw sounding. I think it's really cool. I love the ending. This song is interesting. There's a lot going on to it. I felt like after I finished, I felt like I needed to like listen back again because there's like a lot going on in this song.
Definitely. And then back to Immigrance World with one of our favorites, Chonks. You know, I like kind of they take a couple extra bars in the intro here. McQueen does a little like boo, like it's cool. Getting it in. But what's cool here is how they fill the absence of the clav. You know, that's such a big part of this groove. And so McQueen plays that part. You know, we get with the two guitars, we still get the guitar part in here. You know, once McQueen hops off tour, you know, Fork had their own little run of dates in Europe after this little leg with Snarky Puppy, before McQueen and JT both came back later in the leg to play with Snarky. But he at that point, Mark would cover the clav part. But here McQueen's playing it. You know, Justin's Moog bass is very present. Again, without the clav, there's so much more space to this groove. But they're really, you know, this is a little bit of a more up-tempo version of this song. Sounds amazing. And just Mark just tears into the first solo. It's amazing. You know, I love his guitar tone. I love his guitar playing. And it's great. It's just like classic upbeat funk guitar.
Yeah, I mean, this song is such a vibe. It's so funky, so cool. What's great about this version, they all sound like they're moving as one, but they have these like sick, funky layers and textures. And yeah, that Mark solo, it's like super positive. It's like you're climbing like an escalator up to Funktown. Like it's just like you're just riding it up, you know? It's great. I loved it. I love this version. I think it's awesome. I've really enjoyed the two guitar show. When you told me that this was going to be a two guitar show, I was like hesitant as to if that was going to be something I was into, but I love it.
Yeah, it's really good that there's a lot of different layers happening. You know, my only thing is I'm sad when there's two guitars and they don't play "What About Me."
Yeah, that
because like that's the song that needs. Yeah. You know, like that song really benefits from two guitars. But This is great. And then, then we get another Justin Moog solo on the outro. One thing I wanted to note is comparing this to the one that we heard from Bobby on the outro of this song in episode 9, same instrument, same solo section, but the two players sound so different. And it's really, really cool to listen back to both, kind of A-B them. Bobby's is a lot more like aggressive, like playing an insane number of notes. Like, I described it as obliterating the universe. Justin's is more contained, but like really, really focused. He has his style, and he really works this Moog on the outro, which is cool. Again, we're used to hearing the whammy clav here. And so again, the unique soloists on this, later in the tour, Zach would take the outro a number of times.
Ooh, I want to hear that. That's cool.
Yeah. But yeah, so that's the outro here. What do you think of Justin Moog's solo?
Yeah, I think I want to go back and listen to them compared to each other. I feel like that's really interesting to do because like they both just are such different players. And that's the one thing I love about Snarky Puppy is this ability to kind of have the same song sound totally different. It's incredible.
Yes. And then my favorite thing to happen at the end of Chonks, Justin Rhodes interlude. And I love it so much. He starts with, the outro, like that outro riff of Chonks, and just starts just weaving a beautiful melodic space. I like to throw around the phrase soft bed of electric piano a lot in my reviews. This happens here. And it's amazing. You're not sure where he's going. Obviously, if you've clicked on the song, you know where he's going. But at the show, you're not quite sure where he's going. And then he kind of works in, Sean's main synth melody of Thing of Gold towards the end of this little interlude. And it's just really, really nice. And then just drops right into the beginning of the song. I could listen to Justin just play Rhodes on its own for like 10 minutes.
It's beautiful. It's such a great intro. And it just feels so kind of satisfying when they finally drop into the song. And the crowd is right there. They're so ready for their moment. The crowd is like ready to sing along. It's just like a great moment. It seems really like vibey. I love it. Must be so interesting for them to go all over the world and have these crowds just ready to sing along and know their music so well. It's just so cool.
Yeah, it's amazing. And then, they go into the solo. This section, we get the Don't Stop the Music vamp, the Yarborough and Peoples song.
Yeah.
2019, they were kind of cycling through. I don't know if I mentioned this. I wouldn't have mentioned this in either of the last 2 episodes because we haven't had a 2019 Thing of Gold yet. But throughout this year, they were kind of alternating between 3 different solo vamps on Thing of Gold. You have the regular one from the song. You have this Don't Stop the Music vamp, and then you have the one from Sign of the Times by Prince, which we will hear in today's bonus track. But really interesting here. Talk about unique soloists. This is the only Thing of Gold I've ever heard with a guitar solo, and McQueen just does an absolutely phenomenal job on this. Comes right in. We get a couple extra, I think 1 extra time through the riff before the solo starts. Mark starts throwing in some awesome rhythm work, but man, McQueen, like lots of staccato playing. The horns hop in a little bit. It's just really great vibe and really excellent solo.
Yeah, it's so cool. It's really rhythmic, and I love how it like builds up and kind of bleeds into the riff. It's super great. I think this is definitely one of my favorite versions that I've heard. It just has this extra kind of mustard to it. And
Yeah.
the ending is so great. It's so quiet and precious sounding. It's just, and it has this beautiful kind of like, almost like they're closing down the bar for the night feeling. And Michael says good night in German. And it just feels very like dramatic. It's like a perfect ending to the show.
Yeah, it's great. And I love, Sean's little outro thing. You get a Justin
Yeah.
intro and a Sean outro, on its own. Michael says goodnight, and you're looking at the track time. You're like, this is a 25-minute thing of gold. Why is it over already? That's because the last 15 minutes of it are Michael talking for a very long time and then teaching the Chavi polyrhythm clap. We'll hear in the next episode a 21-minute chonks. That is 10 minutes of chonks and 10 minutes of teaching the crowd the Chavi polyrhythm, which I love crowd participation. But I feel like you can really do this on the fly. There's a 34 klezmer from 9:13:15, I believe, where they do the same polyrhythm exercise. And Michael just kind of like, they're in the middle of the song. Michael's kind of like, okay, this side of the room, do this. This side of the room, do this. And they do it. And it's great. And I feel like they could have played a whole other song in this time. And I love listening to Michael talk and thank the crew, but like,
yeah, it kind of, it kind of sucks the air out of the room a little bit. And at the end of the night before your encore, it's kind of like, I think that other shows we've heard when Michael thanks the crew and talks a bunch, they've done it over like a sick funk beat.
Right.
Which I think
like
is a better
in
move.
Quartermaster.
Yeah, because then it's like everybody's still like grooving and there's still something to latch on to. When you stop the music totally and then you just talk for a while, it just, it's kind of like something we talk a lot about when we talk about Fish and other bands and set listing is flow. And this just obliterates your flow.
Yeah.
And I think
at least this one is across an encore break. Sometimes when Chavi comes like mid-set, it's like,
no, that's really not good. Yeah.
But the Chavi is great. We get a affected solo from Maz on the first one. Bob Reynolds coming back in on the second solo, and Justin doing his best Herbie Hancock impression on the third, which I love listening to. Again, Justin on Rhodes, I could listen to forever.
I love that. I mean, I think that the Maz solo has like this cool distorted feeling to it. And then when Bob comes in, you expect it to be one of these like really, soulful rounded edges solo, but instead Bob takes it kind of brassy. It has like an authoritative feeling. It's different. And I love the percussion is just like incredible at the end of the very end of it. And yeah, the Herbie Hancock, great comparison. I definitely hear that influence as well. Huge fan of Herbie Hancock. And this is just like right in that pocket.
Yeah, it's great. And then, can't go away just yet. Got to take advantage of the dual guitars with one of these big songs. And Shofakan is that song. We get to hear that amazing, amazing guitar riff with two of them. Which is great. Michael bass solo. And I absolutely love how Michael approaches his solos on this song. And Megan, I feel like every time we talk about a Shofakan, you have a very different, very detailed, like analogy of how the song makes you feel, which I absolutely love.
Thank you. I mean, this one's not quite as detailed and long, but this version, it starts out with Sean coming in with some big energy. He's like, all right, you got to sing loud as hell. He's like really working up the crowd. And then the band plays really patient sounding, though. It sounds like you're walking down like a really long, dark hallway that you're not really sure you want to reach the end of, because it's a little bit like you're not really sure how you're feeling, but you don't want it to end. It feels good, but also kind of creepy. And I don't know, there's just a different feeling to this Shofukan that I really loved. And it sounds so rich with the double guitar. It's a great version.
Yeah, it is. And that brings us to the end of 10/26/19 here in Germany. And we are going to go 1 week into the future to Utrecht, I think is the proper pronunciation, in the Netherlands, This is where they recorded "We Like It Here" in 2013. The show they played at the same venue in 2015. They played "We Like It Here" in its entirety in order as kind of an ode to it. And there's also like a 20-minute quartermaster encore, which is great. So check that show out.
Yeah,
Specifically the encore. But we are here to talk about this Thing of Gold. It's our bonus track today. It is my favorite Thing of Gold ever that I have ever heard. It's amazing. Another sick Justin intro, just like the one from today's episode, which I feel like takes a little bit of the hype away from it, because you just had that like fresh, like, whoa, this Justin intro is so cool, and then he does it again 3 songs later. But I mean, I listened to this version of Thing of Gold like a lot.
It's really great. I mean, the intro is so soft and effortless, really, really, really floaty. It's great. And I love how when Bob's on the solo, Sean is slightly echoing him.
Yeah.
And it sounds really, really cool. I love that. I love when you hear them kind of in conversation.
Yeah, and they take the Sign of the Times vamp on this one. Mark's rhythm guitar is absolutely exceptional on this. And then as it progresses, Justin jumps onto the Rhodes, adding in some different chordal work, and then it just keeps going and going and going, and it's just like Bob Reynolds forever. And then like as it like kind of crescendos a little bit, Maz jumps in on the solo too, and they kind of have a little bit of back and forth a little. There's another great version from Manchester on 11-15-19, where they, Bob starts off with the solo and then the other horns pop in a little bit later, which is really cool to hear their interplay. But this solo is just like incredible.
He gets after it. It builds so powerful and it lands so perfectly in the riff. That's one thing I love about this song, is that when they come back to the riff, it feels like a homecoming. It's really nice.
Yeah, exactly. And especially, with the other solos, there's more variance in like the vamp, right? This is just one note throughout, which gives it, again, more space. This one, there's only one guitar, same 2 keyboards, but like, it's just amazing. And Megan, I regret to inform you that your Bob Reynolds fan club membership has been revoked.
Why?
Because this isn't your favorite Thing of Gold.
Oh, come on! I'm gonna definitely appeal that.
We're gonna appeal it. All right.
Appeal that. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well,
I mean,
see how that goes.
I don't know. I mean, I think that like obviously he's incredible in every song I hear them in, but this is not my favorite Bob Reynolds solo.
The Bigly, you prefer the Bigly?
I prefer the Bigly.
Okay.
And I don't know that that's my favorite of all time either, but that one really struck me today.
Fair enough.
And I don't know. I don't think that you're the judge and jury.
I'm not. I'm definitely
fan
not.
Club. There's only one person who is, and that's Mr. Bob Reynolds.
Yeah, we'll ask Bob. We'll be like, hey,
ask him.
Do you think Megan should be kicked out of your fan club?
We'll see what he says.
His response will probably be, "What fan club?"
Yeah, and who's Megan?
Exactly. And that brings us to the end of what we're going to talk about in today's episode, 10/26/19, plus our nice bonus track. It's kind of crazy that we only have one episode left.
I know. I think you're going to miss talking Snarky Puppy with me, Ryan.
Oh, I'm going to keep talking about Snarky Puppy with you. It's just not going to be on a podcast.
That's true. Who am I kidding?
Yeah, but episode 12, we are journeying just short of a month into the future. We'll be talking about 11/22/19 from Paris. An absolutely incredible show. Lots to dive into. A triple encore. Yes, you heard that right. There are 3 encores.
What?
At this show that we're going to talk about in 2 weeks. And, you know, lot of stuff to go into, especially because our bonus track next week is my favorite Snarky Puppy thing ever.
That's
no exaggeration.
Can I say what it is?
Yeah, sure.
It's a quartermaster, right?
It's a quartermaster. It's the 11/26/19 quartermaster.
Okay.
Which is a big deal. But, you know, people can go listen to that via nugs.net, of course, the show and the bonus track. So it's going to be fun. But we'll be back here in 2 weeks with that. We hope everybody enjoyed our episode today, talking about this later era Immigrants show. I've had a great time, of course. I hope you have too.
Oh, I've had so much fun. Thanks, Ryan. And thanks, everyone, for listening. I can't wait to come back for episode 12.
Yes. And we will see you in 2 weeks. Thank you, everybody, for listening, and have a phenomenal rest of your day.